Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is April 10th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope everyone is doing well today. A couple of stories we're going to touch on today is an update to the Brexit because there was some news that broke just very recently, and then also an update to Attorney General Bill Barr, his testimony with the Senate today. So we have the Democrats scrambling, and we have, yet again, when it comes to Brexit, an official extension. An official extension. We have another one, ladies and gentlemen. This can is getting kicked further and further down the road. Okay, so what do we know now? Following the emergency summit of EU leaders today, we had President Jean-Claude Juncker and President Donald Tusk come out, give their press conference to inform everybody what has been agreed to, what is the way forward regarding Brexit. And here's what we have. We have an extension out until October 31st. So happy Halloween to everybody. Everybody's going to dress up as Theresa May and members of the EU Parliament because this is a big trick. This is a big joke. That's what this is. Okay, October 31st. In the meantime, there will be a meeting in June, I believe on June 30th, just to have a meeting to say, okay, well, where are we? Where's the Brexit? What are the negotiations? What's taking place in the House of Commons? What's going on here? So they're basically already baking into the cake that this Brexit, is not going to be done until at least at the end of June 30th. So, I mean, what's going on here? Because let's just do a wrap-up of everything, because I know there's a lot that's been going on over the past few months. This podcast has been hopeful, maybe naively hopeful, but nevertheless hopeful that the will and the voice and the wishes of the British people were going to be heard and carried out. Because we have to remember that the original deadline was March 29th. Okay, so already over a week ago, as we sit here today, March 29th was supposed to be the drop-dead date, either with a deal or without a deal. Well, we know there isn't a deal, and then with all of the shenanigans taking place within the House of Commons, they voted they didn't want to leave without a deal. So that's what we were left with, because we had Theresa May. Her deal originally got shot down by an historic defeat in the House of Commons back in January. She then brought it back to a vote last month, got shut down again. Then there was an 11th hour change in a need to say, okay, all right, we got to get this done because March 29th looms. It's right around the corner. We have to get something done. So they put the vote again to the floor to get shut down once again for the third time. You also, in the interim of all of this, you had members of Parliament come up and say, okay, well, let's do this. Let's put forth other options, and we will call these indicative votes. You remember this? The indicative votes of other options. They came up with 8 separate options. All 8 options got shot down. All of them. The Speaker of the House then said, okay, we will vote on these again. Some of them. He selected, I believe it was 4 of the 8 indicative votes for various reasons. Those 4 indicative votes all got shot down again. So you had nothing, zip, nada. Nothing from Theresa May and her government, nothing from other members of Parliament. So we were now left with pleading their case to the EU to see if they could get another extension. Well, what did they end up with? Well, Theresa May originally wanted to go out until June 30th. The EU said, ain't going to happen. We're going to give you until May 22nd. Again, May 22nd is significant because on May 23rd, you have European parliamentary elections. So they said, we don't want to have to deal with all of these shenanigans. We have other things that we want to mention and deal with. As a European Union, we want Brexit on the back burner, if that's even possible now. So they were trying to avoid that. They also gave Theresa May an extension till April 12th, which is only a couple of days away from now, to come up with another deal to see if she could get that approved. Well, in the interim of all of this, Theresa May finally said, all right, I am going to work with the opposing party, the Labour Party, and Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party. Well, that seems to be a complete farce. I don't think she ever had any intention of really working with the Labour Party, at least not to reach something by April 12th, because she's been flying all over the place, having other conversations with other people. Again, she just met with Angela Merkel of Germany and Emmanuel Macron of France the other day, and they weren't together. So she had to go to Germany separately, and then she had to fly to France separately to have a face-to-face meeting. Why a phone call or a video conference couldn't do, I don't know. I mean, she went there to beg for mercy, beg for forgiveness, beg for an extension. I mean, that's exactly what the British people voted against. They didn't want their elected officials, their prime minister, going all over Europe begging for forgiveness. Oh, please let us do this. The British people want to make these decisions, and they did. They spoke in June of 2016, going on 3 years. And now, with this extension, it may very well surpass the 3-year mark of the date of the referendum, and still no official Brexit. So again, the new deadline is October 31st. There will be a meeting on June 30th to say, oh, well, where's everybody at? We're just checking in, making sure everybody's comfy and cozy here. You need another cup of coffee, you need a blanket. Everything okay? Everything okay? I mean, probably not. It probably won't be. Now, it doesn't mean that something won't get done before that. But the very fact that you have this extension until June 30th just kind of seems to me like, well, at the very least, that's how far we're going to go. And politicians love to kick the can further and further down the road, as we know here in the States. We know everywhere across the world. It makes no difference where you are, whether it's a political matter, whether it's an economic matter, makes no difference. We're just going to kick the can down the road. This world is in need of leadership, and it has very little and very close to none. Very close to none. So here's what some of the members of the EU said. Here is what Donald Tusk had to say this evening. He said that until that deadline, October 31st, what happens will be in the hands of the United Kingdom. It can ratify the withdrawal agreement and leave. Again, that's the agreement that has been voted down 3 times. It can change strategy, or it can decide to revoke Article 50 and cancel Brexit. He says the UK will remain a friend of the EU, and ended his press conference with an address to our British friends. Please, do not waste this time. So, one of the potential options here, at least according to Donald Tusk, is the UK can decide to revoke Article 50 and cancel Brexit. I mean, I've been telling you guys for a long time now, and I'm sure you can tell I'm getting tired of talking about this. I'm getting tired of talking about the U.S.-China trade deal. These things are disgraceful. They're disgraceful. If you can't get the job done, resign. That's the right thing to do. If you can't do your job, just leave, because you serve the people. Or change course. You got to do something. I mean, no changing course with Brexit, because if you follow this podcast, I've been telling the British people, if these type of shenanigans take place, and it looks like this is coming true, that you have to revolt. You have to revolt, especially if it goes back to a second referendum, especially if somehow Article 50 is revoked and this whole Brexit thing is called off. I told you there was going to be some underhandedness taking shape. Something didn't smell right. You can't have these types of deadlines. You can't have these types of negotiations going on and on and on, and then getting nowhere. Something was amiss. Well, now we know that they have until October 31st to get something done. Now, in all of this, because as we were stating yesterday, some of the speculation out there was in regards to there potentially being an extension out until the end of December. And then there was also the possibility that there would be a 1-year extension out until next March of 2020. Well, that's off the table. And what we are learning today is that is supposedly because Emmanuel Macron of France said, no, we're not going to have that long of an extension. It's going to be cut shorter. We're going to basically have a 6-month extension, a little bit longer than 6-month extension. That's it. We got to get this ball rolling. We got other things to deal with. The British people have had enough time to get this solved. The House of Commons isn't showing up to play ball. Enough's enough. So basically what you're seeing here is good cop, bad cop. So you're probably seeing the likes of Angela Merkel of Germany, and then Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk of the EU coming out and playing the good cop. And again, Emmanuel Macron playing the bad cop. So that's all this is. This is wrestling. It's just entertainment. It's just entertainment. They're shaking hands and laughing at each other and laughing at us in the background, because this is a shame. This is a travesty to the institution of democracy. The British people voted. It was leave or remain. It wasn't, well, let's be nice about it or let's be vicious about it. It wasn't that. It was, do you want to remain or do you want to leave? And that was it. They wanted to leave. It might have surprised a lot of people, but so what? A lot of elections have surprised people. A lot of elections have surprised people. Donald Trump becoming president surprised a lot of people. A lot of people are still surprised at that. A lot of people are probably still surprised with Brexit. So what? Get over it. Look, if you can't do your job, leave. If you can't put something constructive forward, sit down and shut up. Because that's all it is. Because it's the same thing over and over. It's a broken record. It's a broken record. And that's why I can't switch up a lot of things on this program in regards to Brexit, because we're hearing the same arguments over and over from the same faces in the House of Commons. It doesn't matter who it's from, whether it's from Theresa May, other members of the Conservative Party, Jeremy Corbyn, other members of the Labour Party, the Scottish National Party, the Irish. It makes no difference. It's the same song and dance. But at least now we know that they have an extension until October 31st with a meeting, basically just to have a meeting, in June 30th. Will something get done in the interim? Possibly, but given the track record of late, highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. So I am very disappointed. I hope the people of the UK are disappointed, especially those who voted to leave. And the further this thing goes, I mean, it's just going to create more and more uncertainty. The markets aren't going to like uncertainty. And you have to remember, if and when a deal ever gets struck, Theresa May is going to resign. So then who's going to come to power? Who will the Conservative Party basically select to become the next prime minister? And then will there be a general election? And what is that going to entail? Because the vote's already been done. The Brexit has occurred from the standpoint of the referendum, and that's the voice and will of the people. What's another leader going to do in there? How are they going to change everything? Because then you're going to need an even further extension beyond this mess. So get it done. It's just a complete lack of leadership. And again, for credit to Theresa May, a little bit of credit. Not much, but a little bit. She, at least in rhetoric, gives credit and voice to the people who voted in 2016 to leave and says that it is incumbent upon the government to deliver. Well, come on, Theresa May, you got to deliver. This is not delivering. Continuing to kick the can down the road is poor leadership. So I applaud you for your rhetoric, but now your actions, I'm growing tired of them. And so should the people of the UK, because this is shameful. And again, it's not just her, it's the House of Commons. This is politicians. Again, most of these people in the House of Commons voted to remain. Jeremy Corbyn wanted to remain. Theresa May herself voted to remain. So you have people who are negotiating to leave who wanted to be there. It just seems like a conflict of interest, or that things were going to be bumpy. So we're not surprised by this. But I don't know if we should thank Emmanuel Macron that at least it's going to be 6 months and not another year of this broken record. And don't forget, that's going to be in the midst of the European parliamentary elections come May 23rd. So what will the British members of that parliament, what are they going to do? Are they going to be civil? Are they going to be rambunctious? Are we going to have a half dozen or more people like Nigel Farage, who led the Brexit movement, who are highly skeptical of the European model? Is that what's going to take place? We're going to find out. I mean, if anything, this is upping the drama. So if you like the drama, I guess buckle up, because it's going to get more and more exciting. If you don't like the drama, then, I don't know what else to tell you. Go to a beach, listen to another program, because there's nothing else I can do. This is the news. We've got to report it, especially these types of things that I like to talk about, because I talk about them because I think they're important. Brexit is important because it has a lot of implications. Most importantly, besides the economic stuff, I think even more importantly is the will of the people to be heard and to have their wishes carried out. So if this fails, if there's a second referendum, this is a big dagger in the heart of democracy, which would be a true shame. Now, back to the state side. We have Attorney General Bill Barr again testifying for the second day up on Capitol Hill. Yesterday, he was interviewed basically by the House. Today, he met with the Senate. And now we have, it's the same people. It's the same people, but now it's the Queen herself. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that the Attorney General, William Barr, is, quote, going off the rails, while referencing his testimony. Quote, let me just say how very, very dismaying and disappointing that the chief law enforcement officer of our country is going off the rails yesterday and today. Quote, he is the Attorney General of the United States of America, not the Attorney General of Donald Trump, she said. Ooh, get him, Nancy, you tough gal, you. Go after him. I mean, is she up for an Oscar? I mean, I know she's out there in San Francisco and she's out there in California. Does she want an Oscar? I mean, how much more dramatic can she be here? This is shameful. This is shameful. And here's what this is, folks. They're getting nervous. Been talking about this for quite a while now. I've been predicting fireworks of some sort. What I've been meaning by fireworks, and I've explained this to some extent, is the fact that with this Bob Mueller report wrapping up, with there being no Trump-Russia collusion, with there being no obstruction of justice, now it is the president's turn to investigate the investigators. And the Democrats ain't going to like it because they know what's been taking place. Now, if you watch a lot of CNN, if you watch a lot of MSNBC, you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's coming because Rachel Maddow, Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper, they don't talk about the other side. They don't. I know because I watch them all. I watch them all. There are things that are said on Fox News that aren't said on the other stations. There are things that are said on the other stations that aren't said on Fox News. That's why I tell you guys, you got to flip the stations. You got to listen to a little bit of all of them. Don't listen to them all day. You'll go crazy. You'll go crazy. I used to listen to them all day, and I said, you know what, I'm going crazy, and I stopped. Because you just can't. It's just, and a lot of it's the same story. It's different spin. You look at a lot of these people, they're some of them are pretending to be journalists. They're not. They're commentators. And even the journalists you have out there, you got to kind of look at with, you got to squint in your eyes and say, really, is this guy just telling me the facts or is he putting his spin on this? I mean, and that's a shame. This is the world of fake news in which we live. And again, I've told you, you have a lot of people who have watched CNN and MSNBC and their ratings have been plummeting recently, especially following the summary of the Bob Mueller report, because everybody was expecting Trump to go down. If not Trump, his children. If not his children, somebody in his campaign. If not somebody in his campaign, his administration. Nobody. There's no more indictments. It's done. It's over with. And on top of that, the hopes was, well, maybe he's not a puppet of Vladimir Putin. I mean, okay, that's a little bit of a stretch, right, guys? Yeah, wink, wink, nod, nod. But we might have him on obstruction of justice, and we're pretty certain about that one, right? Well, no obstruction of justice either. So, I mean, they just got both sides of their rear end whacked, and they weren't expecting it. They were expecting to be popping champagne bottles and saying, all right, we got him. We don't like Donald Trump. We don't like his family, his campaign, his administration, nothing. He's going to be impeached. He's done. And hopefully above and beyond that, he's going to go to jail. Wrong. Not happening. Not happening. And now you have Bill Barr, the Attorney General, testifying, saying, you know what? I think spying did occur. And what is he referencing when he says this? He didn't go into great detail, but we know what he means by this. I think spying did occur. He means that the Obama administration, the FBI and the DOJ, and maybe some others involved, quite possibly the NSA and the CIA, were spying on candidate Trump in his campaign and other members of his campaign or people associated with him. So what's going on now? It's being flipped around. This is why Nancy Pelosi is out there saying AG Bill Barr is going off the rails, because he wants to investigate the investigators, because he sees something was amiss. He says something. Here's what he says. He says, quote, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. Well, it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal, Mr. Attorney General. Couldn't agree with you more. Who doesn't agree with you is, of course, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, Maxine Waters. You know the names. The same cuckoo nuts all over the place. Chuck Schumer. They're scared, folks. They are shaking in their boots. In addition to this, Nancy Pelosi says, I don't trust Barr. I trust Mueller, though. She doesn't trust the AG, but she trusts Bob Mueller. Well, we're going to see, because we were told yesterday that the report, at least a redacted version of the Bob Mueller investigation, was going to be released within a week. Now, again, given government work, that might be an actual week. It might be a little bit longer, but we anticipate that it will be released. A redacted version will be released within 10 days. That's what we're anticipating. It will be, of course, redacted. The Democrats will continue to cry foul. Jerry Nadler threatened to subpoena and take this issue all the way to court if need be, so that the whole thing can be released. I just think that that's careless and reckless. And they know that it's careless and reckless, but this is wrestling. This is the WWE on television here. I mean, they know. And this is what's so shameful and disgraceful is the fact that these people know, at least they better know, because they've been there making their living doing this stuff for decades, okay? I mean, this ain't their first term. This ain't like AOC and the Green New Deal, okay? She's off her rocker right out of the gate. These people have been there. They should at least know the game. They should at least know some of these laws and statutes. So I'm going to give them the credit of the doubt, if you can believe it, and say, look, Jerry Nadler and a whole bunch of other Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, they should know that this whole thing cannot be released. I mean, there's grand jury testimony and information in there, maybe named sources and methods. Also, Bill Barr made a good point to the fact that there are peripheral people who are involved, which basically means people who might have been investigated, but there was no crime to be found that they committed. There was nothing. There was nothing. So the reason that those names don't want to come out, they don't want those names to come out, is because they're not going after them legally. And in this world in which we live, those people's lives and reputations would be ruined, because you would have a reporter from every single network trying to track down those people on their lawn 24/7. What did you know? Who was asking you what? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, their lives would just be torn apart, like so many other people's were. Some of them were dragged through the mud. Some of them, rightly so, because they did commit crimes, but they were never going to be investigated unless it had to do with Donald Trump. And other people absolutely did nothing. It was a process crime, which wouldn't have happened but for this investigation that never should have happened. So now you have Bill Barr going in to investigate the investigators. Hopefully, the president, or through Lindsey Graham, or somebody else in the Senate, or potentially the House, will declassify documents, whoever has the authority to do it. Obviously, the president has the authority to declassify anything he wants. So hopefully that happens. Names are dropped. We get to see who in the Obama administration, who in the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, who is responsible for unmasking names, who is responsible for putting this Steele dossier together. Because you have to remember, it was Hillary Clinton, her campaign, the DNC, funding Fusion GPS, basically to go out and find somebody, Christopher Steele, a former UK spy with, I don't know what you want to call it, friends in the Kremlin, has some connections, and they know they got some dirt on Donald Trump, and we want to release that dirt on Donald Trump. And again, the more and more we find out, it seems less and less that Christopher Steele actually wrote this report or the whole thing. So it was probably much more on Fusion GPS. They were just looking for a fall guy or somebody to say they penned it. You know, he did it. And then they paid him money and said, sure, I'll take all that money. I'll say whatever you want, or you can say whatever you want, and, you know, just pay me. Because that's the world we live in. So that's fine. So the Democrats know this. They know this is going to come back on them. They know it's going to come back on the Hillary Clinton campaign, on the DNC, on Fusion GPS, and on members of the Obama administration, if not President Obama himself. Because you have to remember, in past podcasts, when I went over Lisa Page, a former attorney within the FBI, who was there involved with the Clinton email investigation, along with the beginning of the Trump-Russia collusion story investigation, she said that President Obama wanted to be kept in the loop on everything. On everything. Especially when it came to the Trump-Russian story. So, I mean, come on, guys. If Obama wanted to be kept in the loop, you think he was kept in the loop? How many people are going to say no to the President of the United States? Okay, I mean, this was a matter of national security. At least that's what we're told. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than this. This is a spy novel of spy novels, right? You have a presidential candidate who could potentially win, who might be a puppet of Russia, and then he becomes the president of the United States. I mean, how does it get any worse than that? Of course, that's not true. That's not true. So now we got a lot of problems here. A lot of problems. You still got Jim Comey. What's going on with him? You got Andy McCabe. What's going on with him? I mean, the guys are writing books. They're trying to get money for their legal defense. I'm telling you, that's what it's for. That's what it's for. You got Loretta Lynch, the former attorney general under President Obama, meeting with Bill Clinton on a tarmac to talk about, of course, golf and their grandchildren. Ugh. I mean, if you believe that, stick around. I got a bridge to sell you. I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did, because they figured, well, just in case we get caught, because they were never supposed to be caught in the first place. But just in case, I'm sure they said, oh, yeah, I was out golfing today. My grandkids are doing well. How about yours? Oh, they're fine. Thanks for asking. That way, if they're ever asked under oath, they weren't lying, because technically they did for 2 seconds. Then they got down to the real meat and potatoes. What's that? Will we ever find out what that trade-off was? Because Loretta Lynch did a semi-recusal and said, you know what, Jim Comey can make that decision, or the career prosecutors at the DOJ and FBI, they can make the decision whether or not to go after Hillary Clinton. Well, Jim Comey came out on July 5th, 2016 and said, well, she's guilty of A through Z, but, we're just not going to press charges. So she gets to skate scot-free, and she's been free ever since. We'll see if that changes anytime soon. I think given declassification, I think the Attorney General looking and taking spying on a campaign very seriously, so he may begin to start an investigation into the investigators. I think there's probably one already well underway. I think you have a lot of that underway with respect to the Office of Inspectors General. There's a couple reports that should be coming out, again, hopefully sooner rather than later, and I'm hoping it's this spring, the summer at the latest. That will be more fireworks, I have to imagine, because they're just going to show so much wrongdoing by so many of these big names. And again, this isn't against 99% of the men and women in FBI, DOJ, CIA, NSA. This is the top 1%, or perhaps the top 1% of the 1%. The innermost circle of the administration, with John Brennan of the CIA and Jim Clapper, just a whole host of people. You see these names. They're out there, and they're scared. And the Democrats are scrambling. They are now going to start attacking Bill Barr, because now you have Nancy Pelosi saying he's going off the rails. No, Madam Speaker, you are going off the rails and have been off the rails for quite a while. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. It's about to get interesting. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure having you as always. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out, leave your comments. I'd love to hear from you. This is the Capitol News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.